Well, hello again, and thanks for joining me here on Classic Dirt Bike TV, and of course many thanks to each and every one of you for your many positive comments and for taking the time to subscribe to my channel. Okay, next up we're going to take a look at some archive racing footage, and this time we're going to take a look at a few races from the Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club's event that was held at a very wet and windy Ardentinney near Dunoon on the west coast of Scotland in 2011. Now this water that you can see is not the local stream or brook. This was the excess water that was actually running across the track from the monsoon rains the night before the event, so as you can gather it was going to be a pretty muddy affair. Now although on the day it was reasonably dry, it was very, very windy, and we're going to kick off now with the first race, which is the pre-1968 class. Now on the day there was a quite decent turnout of riders for this event, although when some of the riders saw how wet the track was, they decided not to take part and would end up just standing trackside to watch some of the others braving the elements. So in this first race it looks like Steve Dent has made quite a good start there on the Faber BSA. Looks like Andrew King is in second position on the HIS Stormer, but as you can see we've had our first faller of the day. It looks like number 89, I think that's Mike Bell on his big BSA Gold Star. Although it doesn't seem to matter what time of year you attend this Dunoon Scramble, it always seems to be wet no matter what time of year you go to this event, but a very strange part of the country, the west coast of Scotland, if you're not getting eaten alive by the dreaded midgy insects, you're getting drowned in the monsoon rains. So it looks like Steve Dent is still your race leader there on the right hand side. Andrew King is just making his way through now to take the lead of this race on the HIS Stormer machine. Now as you can see this track will certainly cut up as the races go on, but nevertheless these brave riders braving the elements to take part in this Scottish Classic event. Number 127 there, I think that's Mike Doby on his CZ. But these kind of scrambles are certainly a good spectator day out, but maybe not so for the riders that have to wade their way through these very muddy tracks, but fair play to the guys who actually took part. And so as he comes round to complete lap 2, it's still Andrew King, number 289 on the HIS Stormer machine. I think this bike actually belongs to Charlie Robertson, and Charlie very kindly lends this bike to young Andrew here to give it a blast every so often. Now it's quite hard to imagine that this is the 22nd of May in 2011, almost the start of British summertime, but a very wet and windy Ardentinney in Dunoon. This part of the track here is especially wet, and some of the riders were struggling to actually get through this part of the track, but once again Mike Doby on the CZ looks like he's splashing his way through to another racing lap. Of course, just 4 laps for these older vintage bikes, and when you consider these racing conditions, probably 3 laps is 3 laps too many. But as you can see, Andrew King just doing his very best to splash through these horrendous conditions here at Dunoon. It looks like Mike Doby has been the first victim in this very wet part of the track. It looks like Mike has dropped his CZ machine but nevertheless he still looks fit to fight another day. Number 89 again is Mike Bell, who of course dropped his bike on the first lap, but it looks like Mike is now making up for lost time. But as he comes towards the checkered flag, it's going to be the first win of the day for number 293. That's young Andrew King on the HIS. Okay, next up we have the combined pre-1975 and twin shock class as they make their way into turn 1. Looks like Ian Robertson's made quite a good start there on the C&J Honda. One of these big C&J frames with the XR500 Honda in the frame. So it's been a good start here by Ian Robertson. Slipping and sliding his way around the racetrack. Second position looks like it's Jim Colligan on the 1981 490 Michael, so this will give you an idea just how wet this actual part of the racetrack is. It's Derek McCauley going through there on the Bultaco Persang. Aaron Dent going through. And number 30 there, I think that's Richie McFadden on the Bultaco Persang. So as they make their way through to complete lap 1, it's still number 100. That's Ian Robertson on the C&J Honda 500. A bike that's perfectly suited for these wet conditions, a big Honda 4-stroke machine. Jim Colligan is still in second position. I think it's Derek McCauley in third. Looks like Tommy Anderson there in the yellow is doing quite well on the 250 Husqvarna machine. And number 18 just behind Tommy Anderson is number 18, that's Aaron Dent. I think Aaron's riding one of those CR 250 Honda Elsinores. So as the riders make their way up to the very wet part of the track, it looks like Aaron Dent nearly came a cropper there, but we're looking at Tommy Anderson on the 250 Husqvarna machine just coming towards us. This is just like the old Scrambles events from back in the day when you used to watch these kind of events on the BBC, on the TV, a way back in the day. But as you can see, it's extremely wet at this particular part of the track, as we're looking at it's actually number 16 Aaron Dent and not number 18 as I previously suggested. But here's your race leader, number 100, Ian Robertson, who of course he sadly lost in 2019 due to a horrific accident, not motorcycle related of course, but nevertheless it was a very tragic loss when we lost our dear friend Ian Robertson. In second position is number 18, that's Jim Colligan on the 1981 490 Michael. Jim appears to be enjoying himself on that big German machine. Tommy Anderson just making his way through. And just coming towards us is Stephen McNally. Number 60 there, I think that's Callum Wilson. Callum's riding that very rare bike with the Husqvarna frame and the big Yamaha TT500 motor in it. Looks like Aaron Dent has now dropped his Honda Elsinore, but looks like he's still good to go. But it's still this man here, number 100, Ian Robertson, who is your race leader on the C&J 500 Honda. And Ian's just making his way through to start his last and final lap of this race. So this has been quite a good start for Ian, and it looks like he's heading towards his first win of the day. Jim Colligan is still in second position. But as you can see, it's quite a nice day here at Ardentinney, despite the howling wind and the extremely wet racetrack, but still a beautiful part of the country here at Ardentinney. But if you could only get decent weather to race in, then it would certainly make a difference. So it's a win for number 100 here, Ian Robertson on the C&J Honda, and it's going to be Jim Colligan who's going to cross the line in second on the 81-490 Michael. Okay, next up we're moving on to the combined pre-1968 up to and over 350cc as the riders leave the line. As I mentioned previously, there was a good turnout of riders, but quite a few riders decided not to take part due to the very wet and slippy conditions, and decided just to watch the racing rather than taking part. But it looks like Liston Bell's made quite a good start. Jimmy Allen there is in second position. Dougie Gordon also making his way through. Stuart Riddle, number 164, there struggling with the CZ. It looks like Jimmy Allen has dropped his machine, but it's a battle of the elements to try and get through these wet and sticky parts of the racetrack. So as the riders come round to complete lap 1, it looks like it's Liston Bell who is your race leader. I think Liston's riding a lovely old Tribsaw machine, the BSA frame with the Triumph engine inside. So it's Liston Bell who is your race leader. Quite a heavy machine to throw around these wet and sticky racetracks, but nonetheless Liston doesn't seem to be encountering many problems, as of course these kind of bikes would have been racing in these conditions way back in the day, so there's nothing really changed in that respect. In second position here we're looking at, I think that's number 85, I think that's Dougie Gordon. It looks like Dougie Gordon's riding a Rickman Triumph as he makes his way to that very wet and sticky part of the racetrack. Looks like Dougie's negotiated that part reasonably well. Number 164 is Stuart Riddle just going through there on the twin port CZ, and I think just ahead of Stuart there is number 51, I think that's Ian Ridley. So as we look to the far side of the track for our race leader, it's still Liston Bell on the Tribsaw. Looks like, whoops, Liston's giving that bike a handful there, speedway style, but he's still in the saddle thankfully. But looks like Liston's got quite a decent lead on the second place man, so looks like he's very comfortable for a possible win in this race. But, as you can see, the ruts in some of the turns beginning to get quite deep now after a couple of races have passed. Now we're looking at number 51, that's Ian Ridley. Just behind Ian is Stuart Riddle on the twin port CZ machine. So as they come to this very tricky part of the racetrack, we're looking at number 51, Ian Ridley, and that's Jimmy Allen who joins Ian in the Ardentinney bog. So Jimmy's looking at Ian Ridley and saying, was it your fault? No, I think it was mine, but it's all good fun. But that's Jimmy Allen and Ian Ridley. So we're looking at our race leader, Liston Bell, number 98 on the Tribsaw, making his way through to complete his last and final lap. It doesn't look like Ian Ridley and Jimmy Allen have got their bikes fired up again yet, but hopefully they will manage to cross the line to take a finish position. But these are very difficult conditions if you're not used to racing in these kind of extreme mud conditions. But this has been a good ride by number 98 here as he comes round to take the checkered flag. It's a win for Listenbell, number 98. Okay, we're now moving on to the pre-1975 class. And we've got Robert Kennedy there on the 1975 CCM. Jim Allison also riding a CCM. We have Fergus Moody there on a Husqvarna machine. So we're just about good to go. So as I leave the line, it looks like local man Grant McClure's made quite a good start on the 74 Michael. So as they come towards us, it is indeed Grant McClure, number 86 on the Michael, who is your race leader. Just going through there, number 54 is Robert Kennedy on the CCM bike. Now I see Ian Robertson back out there again, and it looks like Ian's riding an old RM Suzuki in this class. Remember, Ian won a race there when on his C&J 500 Honda. Now coming towards us, number 27. I'm not exactly sure who that rider is. It could be Craig Dixon, but it's been quite a while since I've looked at the footage of this particular race, so some of the names are not too familiar to me now. Now that is number 86, that's Grant McClure, so it looks like Grant has either dropped his bike or had some kind of mechanical issue at the far side of the track, because Grant was leading this race at the start, so looks like Grant has dropped back a considerable amount here on his 74 Michael machine. But this part of the track is getting very difficult as more and more bikes make their way through. So number 27 is your race leader on that very quick CZ machine, and apologies for not being able to name the rider. It could be Craig Dixon, because Craig used to race with this club many years ago and rode one of these CZ machines, but I do apologise if that is not the case. Now I think that's one of the Barnes boys in the CCM bike. Looks like one of the Barnes boys have made the trip from down south to race here. Number 9 there, that's Lewis Bell, who of course is the brother of Liston, and Lewis is riding what looks like a 1974 CCM as he makes his way through the wheel wash, let's call it. But here's your race leader. It's still this very quick rider on the CZ 360 machine as he comes round to complete another racing lap. He's doing very well on this bike and doesn't seem to be encountering many problems in the wet and sticky parts of this racetrack. Although I have to say that over the many years that I attended this event here at Ardentinney Dunoon, I think we only had one reasonably dry weekend at this event. It always seems to always rain when the Classic Club comes to race at this venue, but a very strange part of the world, even for a Scottish summer. And even the locals here at Dunoon always seem to say that this part of the country has its very own micro climate. And although the weather looks quite nice at the moment, the racetrack, as you can see, is still very sticky and wet. We're looking at local man, number 86, Grant McClure, who in fact helped put this track and course together. So you have to say a big thank you to Grant for his efforts building this racetrack. But as these guys head towards the checkered flag, we're just looking at number 153 going through there. That's Jim Allison on the big CCM. Okay, next up we're going to take another very brief look at another one of the pre-1968 classes. And it looks like it's been another good start by Andrew King on the HIS Stormer. You may remember that Andrew won the first race in this class on this Charlie Robertson machine. So he's certainly made another good start here in this race 2 as they all head towards the wet part of the racetrack. So we'll just watch a few of them as they come through this wet mud hole. It looks like Andrew King's made his way through okay. Number 0 there in third position, that's Ken Suter. Mike Doby going through there on the CZ. Number 89 is Mike Bell once again on the big BSA Gold Star. So it looks like most of them have negotiated lap 1 reasonably well. But here's your race leader, number 293. It's Andrew King on the CZ machine. A very talented young rider, this Andrew King rider, and doing very well on this old 2-stroke HIS. Of course, the day wasn't all about racing really, it was really about getting round the track and putting the laps in to get championship points, and the racing wasn't too great on the day, but certainly a good spectator watch if you weren't taking part, but wasn't so great for these guys who were braving the elements. Okay, just making his way through once again is Mike Bell on the Gold Star, but it's still number 293 Andrew King. Looks like Andrew's heading towards his second wash of the day. Yeah, Andrew's made a very good start. Ken Suter there. It looks like Ken's struggling a little bit there with his getting his feet down. It looks like Ken's riding an old BSA Gold Star as well. Number 141 going through. I'm not entirely sure who that rider is, but Ken Suter doing very well there on that big heavy machine. Mike Doby going through there on the CZ. And once again Mike Bell on his Gold Star as he comes round to the wheel wash to get some water into that big BSA engine. But as I said, it wasn't really about racing these bikes, it was mainly about putting the laps in and getting round the track and make sure that you got a few championship points towards your title at the end of the year. But here's your race leader, number 293 Andrew King, as he heads towards the checkered flag on his last and final lap. Looks like number 141 is in second position here. Looks like he's riding an old 441 BSA Victor. As you can see, very, very tricky conditions here at Ardentinney Dunoon. But fair play to these riders for taking part in this quite muddy race event. Okay, just to finish off some of the highlights from this 2011 Scottish Classic event here at Dunoon, we'll have a look at the pre-1975s and twin chock classes. It looks like Ian Robertson's had a little fall at the start there, but it's number 18 Jim Colligan who's your early race leader. Derek McCauley in second place. It looks like Callum Wilson is in third position. We're looking at number 16 Aaron Dent on his CR250 Honda Elsinore. But I have to say, like I said, over the years that I've attended this event, I've seen this racetrack in much wetter conditions than you see here, and it was quite an effort trying to get round the track at all, but looks like Ian Robertson has got his bike up and running again, and he's now starting to play catch up in this race. So here's your race leader, number 18 Jim Colligan from Ochtermuchty in Fife. and Jim's riding that 1981 490 Michael. Now naturally, of course, many motocross riders really love these kind of wet and sticky conditions, but for me personally, I have to admit I was absolutely useless riding in these kind of muddy track conditions. So for me personally, this was certainly a no-go type of event, and I was purely a fair weather racer, but nevertheless I take my hat off to these guys who are making the effort in these very muddy conditions. Now number 60 there, that's Callum Wilson, who is riding that Husqvarna bike with the big TT 500 Yamaha motor in the frame, so a hybrid machine, but nevertheless a very nice looking bike. But it's still at number 18, Jim Colligan on the Michael, who is your race leader. Jim is one of the very few riders who enjoy racing in these wet conditions. Jim always told me that the wetter it is, the better he likes it, and he looks like he's doing very well in these sticky conditions. Looks like we've got another faller in the background there. That looks like it's Derek McCauley on the 250 Bultaco Pursang. I think Derek was doing quite well there at one point. I think he was in about third position, but he appears to have his bike running again and is on his way. Once again, we're looking at Tommy Anderson on the 250 Husqvarna. Number 122, that's Fergus Moody on the Michael. Another rider having a bit of trouble negotiating this Ardentinney racetrack on his what looks like an old 474 Michael. But as you know, these bikes, when you drop them in these kind of conditions, they always weigh about 3 times more when you're trying to lift them. So here's your race leader as he starts his last and final lap. It's number 18, Jim Colligan on the 490 Michael. So as Jim Colligan makes his way through to start his last and final lap of this Ardentinney mud hole, we're looking at Tommy Anderson on the 1975 250 Husqvarna machine. And just behind Tommy, it looks like Derek McCauley has managed to get his Bultaco going, so Derek has moved up into third position. So we're looking at Ian Robertson on the right, talking to Willie Wallace, another famous rider here in Scotland. So here's your race leader as he comes round to take the checkered flag. It's going to be his first win of the day for number 18, Jim Colligan. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed these one or two races from the 2011 Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club's event here at a very muddy and windy Dunoon. And once again, thanks for joining me, and I hope you retune to my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel to see more of these old vintage racers.